you know, and given that this probably level of awareness that's being um, shared now, in terms of design, are there advances now to make sure that the resiliency also of the buildings being constructed within the archipelago are far more resilient than ever
In
before?
terms of design, we're actually quite advanced. We have some of the best architects and engineers in the world. I mean, the biggest architecture companies, for example, in Singapore and Hong Kong, if you look at their offices, their professionals are predominantly Filipinos. So it's just more of a matter of implementation and checks and balances. The irony as well, imagine the red tape involved in getting building permits and development permits. We go through so many offices. Uh, Anecdotally, without corruption, it would take almost 2 years to get a legitimate development permit. And yet, did any of these agencies check on the fault line, on the liquefaction risks, on the flood risk, etc.? So we should really do our own due diligence when we look into where we locate our offices. So in terms of design, it's really there. Actually, our building code is quite strict. Buildings should be built for intensity 8. And that's why in the numbers shown by Director Solidum, for example, the taller buildings have low risk because there are several professionals involved. The risk is if there were no professionals involved and if there were shortcuts done. Shortcut is, I'm not just saying bribery with government, it also happens in the building industry. So we should always do our audits.
Thank you. Yeah, General.
Uh, this is very important because, as I know, when the big one will happen, as I about four bridges will along the Pasig River will, but they're repairing one now, and I'd like to tell you that I live near the Skyway. I'm very confident it will not be damaged because that is, I believe, will withstand magnitude 10. But the vehicles flying the skyway when the earthquake will happen, that might be a big problem. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'd like to add, we're just talking, no? The General, sabi ko, which number of hours is very critical? Well, 24 hours or it could be more because there will be aftershocks. So the question earlier about the communication, that's the time you should not be wasting. If ever there's still lines, no, power lines, don't waste that precious charge of your cell phone. So, pakiusap lang po, 24 hours, that you have to be, just yourself first. You should make sure you survive. Okay, that's what he was saying also, si Director Solidum. So, and the next, based on our discussion with the utilities companies, we had an interoperability meeting. It will take them 2 to 3 days. So, it depends also on how much damage we will be experiencing.
So first thing,
Okay.
but my name is Jay from Cognizant, Jay Gomez. So my first question is, based on the slide, the earlier presentation, so MMDA said that you have 100,000 trained volunteers. So that's 0.08% of 12 million Metro Manila residents, right? I think this is the daytime residents. So what is the government or MMDA doing in expanding that number? Because based on our experience with Ondoy, the first responders were the ones also affected. So this 100,000 is really not the absolute number. So then my next question would be is that in terms of security, I think we forgot to account this. In terms of security, what is the PNP and the armed forces, what do you call this, participation in the whole scheme of things? Because for example, in Parañaque or Muntinlupa, the National Penitentiary is there. And also, a lot of Metro Manila cities have a penchant of harboring, what they call this, informal settlers. I'm not saying that they're all criminals, but it's a reality. So those are my questions.
I will answer first the first one. And then the second question will be the general. Okay, may I ask you to be a volunteer in the first place? So, be a volunteer. Okay, we have, yes, you are a volunteer now? Only now, okay. All right. We have the Metro Manila Emergency Volunteer Corps. So all you have to do is just give us your application. We have our form, and then we put you in our database. At any time we like to call the CCAP, your association, there's only one person that I will call, your president or the chairman. And then he calls every one of you. Are you willing to be a volunteer as an institution? Resounding yes dapat. Okay. So, just get in touch with us through hotline 136 or the office of the general manager because that volunteerism is under me. Okay.
Maganda po yung ginagawa ng, well, MMDA is doing very good in this line. Their deployment is not exactly Metro Manila all the time. If you would notice, in many of the disasters, major disasters that has happened in the Philippines, MMDA sent a sizable delegation of responders in those disaster-stricken areas. And I am hoping also that with those many areas that Metro Manila has helped, I would expect that when Manila gets hit, somehow these areas would send assistance also. You're right, in Tacloban and in Leyte, all the responders were victims. Even our own office, regional office in Leyte, were all victims. So what we had to do is send other people from other regions to work there. Now, if you notice the presentation of Dr. Solidum, if you look at responders from other areas, we have planned that regions 3 and 4A should immediately respond to Metro Manila. But their statement is that because of the length, the distance for which the destruction of the earthquake would be, they would also be victims of an earthquake, a big earthquake. So we have to plan for more than just Region 3 and Region 4A. So it seems that all regions must help Metro Manila because Metro Manila is a very, very important city in the Philippines. It must not only survive, it must continue its business, its economy for the country to survive. So I'd like to say that while we should not expect so much from the government, but I'd like to tell you that your government is very, very much ready to respond on a grand scale. We have seen this in many recent big disasters starting 2009 in Ondoy. When we passed, that was 2009, we passed Republic Act 10121 in 2010. And afterwards, we have improved in succeeding operations. The last one was in Yolanda. We learned a lot. For your information, we have, before Yolanda, we had 8 response clusters under the Department of Social Welfare and Development involving several agencies and government, clusters like distribution of food, non-food, health, camp coordination, camp management, security, emergency telecommunications, and so on and so forth. We had 8. The United Nations, who were partnering with us, actually had 11. But they had to adjust with us. But after Yolanda, we now have 14 clusters, maybe 16 at the end of the year. So the question of Armed Forces of the Philippines, the Armed Forces of the Philippines has been designated to lead the search and rescue and retrieval cluster. So the Armed Forces of the Philippines will be expected to provide assistance to Metro Manila. The Philippine National Police Well, aside from helping other clusters, the Philippine National Police is going to lead the security peace and order cluster to address the issue that you have mentioned, because as you know, when food is scarce, people tend to find food wherever it may be. So there has to be a semblance of security. When we responded to Yolanda, we had sent C-130s full of food, only to find out that it was not food that we should have first sent there. We should have sent policemen and soldiers in the first place before the food. So these are the lessons learned that we now have in our practice, and we will continue to improve. And actually, yun mo sa pagyayabang, many countries in the world are now trying to see what we're doing, and we are sharing with them. We receive very sizable delegations every now and then, and we give them briefings. We share them with them all our experiences. We are also invited to speak in international forums to share our experiences, because this is the country where disaster risk reduction and management is practiced. We are now the number 2 most dangerous place in the world to live in, according to UNISDR. And behind Tonga, and the third is Vanuatu. Those are small areas. But the Philippines is a big area, and we need to share what we experience with other countries.
Wait, I just segue lang kay kay General. Just to have a happy note on this. Parang yung mga mukha ninyo takot lang talaga. Well, I asked our team who went to Nepal. Okay, if it happens in Metro Manila, I asked them who has better chances of recovery. They said it's Metro Manila. Because of these coordination efforts that we have been doing, the preparedness that we have been doing, and of course, the volunteerism is just as important. Okay?
You want to add, and then we'll
Yes.
go over.
On the volunteering side, we in the Red Cross is really promoting volunteering program, and we call it Red Cross 143. So we have 143 volunteers in every barangay in the country. So, but I don't know if you can really go out at the height of an emergency from your workplace to do other things like search and rescue. But I think if you have a very good business continuity plan that can be converted into also a humanitarian service continuity plan. So aside from continuing your business at the height of an emergency, maybe your call centers can help us also receive calls, okay, from distress communities or victims of disasters. And I think you have the best people to help us with that, because you are trained, you handle distressed clients, angry clients, mad clients. So, in this kind of field, this skill is so rare that we cannot just get from any professional group. So you must have the compassion. You must know, you must understand, how to handle people well. Even if you give the right communication, but if you don't handle them well, it is not effective. So I think this is an area where you can also best help without really getting out of your, work at the height of an emergency when you're in your workplace, but you can continue your business at the same time, adding on to that, giving humanitarian services. Thank you.
Doctor?
Okay, let me discuss something with you. I'm an advocate of response, but I think we need to refocus our preparedness, not merely on response. Let me ask you this. You're halfway between your house and your office, and then the earthquake happened. Will you proceed to your office or go back to your houses? Houses, right? Do you think the volunteers will proceed to rescue or go back to their houses? Okay. In your business continuity, one of the most important resources would be your staff or your employees. And you need to make sure that they are safe, not only in their offices or industrial areas, but most importantly, in their houses. So you have to make sure that not only the employees are safe, but also their families. But during an earthquake, how do you make them safe? But by having them live in safer houses. So how many of your employees live in safe houses? Let me pause. Safe houses. Kasi masama ang dating pag safe house. Matibay na bahay. Ilan sa empleyado nyo ang nasa matibay na bahay and building? I think the need to focus our attention, we need to refocus our timing in disaster assistance. We are so kind that after major disaster, we give our money, many things. Why don't we share our resources even before the earthquake would happen? And at the company level, at least start with your own employees and their families. Check how many employees live in non-engineered buildings. Even our policemen and armed forces, many of them might be living in unsafe houses. I think we need to do that. If you are a contact organization where you have a lot of engineers, when people are sick, they go to the doctors. They cannot afford the doctors. Doctors have medical mission. The problem with the earthquake is that we have sick houses and buildings. And the reason why they're sick, especially those who are socially, they cannot afford to hire these professionals. But sorry ma'am, but we don't see a lot of engineering or architectural mission to help these poor people. And that is where the problem lies. Our response is not needed if we don't see a lot of buildings and houses that will collapse. We are good in responding, but that's not the main issue for the earthquake, I think.
I think there were 3 points that were mentioned. The first one was really around, I think there is a great, team that's being assembled by our government, but obviously it still take a lot of heavy lifting, making sure that as citizens and as people living in Metro Manila, we do really need to prepare. And then, to Dr. Solidum's point, it's almost like going to the root cause and say, are our employees really living in a very safe place, right?
Romel, one question here.
Here, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Soren from United Health Group. I'd like to ask General Jimenez and General Fajardo and Yusek Jimenez, in terms of for a worst case scenario, in terms of recovery of infrastructure, what's the time frame? I mean, we might be prepared medically, we might have the utilities for medical requirement, but then if the roads are impassable, the bridges are broken, how do we let this, how is it accessible for them to do rescue or to respond to the requirement?
Thank you.
Tough question, sa recovery. I will just give you an example, sir. March 2011, the tsunami in Japan, Tohoku region, happened. And this is already the 4th year. 12, 13, 14, 15. There's still no houses. Reconstruction is very difficult. First, you must have the budget. 2, there will be a lot of rezoning to be done. Some of the those who were affected in Japan, they're still in their how do you call it, shelter homes, temporary shelters. And but I've seen it because I was there for 2 weeks to study the reconstruction. But believe me, it takes a while. Our Tacloban, magti 3 years na po tayo, ang rehabilitation is still not enough for those who were displaced. I've been to the area 5 times the last 6 months. Some are still in tents. So this is also how fast we can do it in our local areas. But for those who can do it, definitely do something to protect your families.
That was the rehab portion. You have also a question on early recovery. Going back to the Sendai tsunami and earthquake, Japan was able to restore the expressway in 1 week, and they were able to restore operationability of